buckle up. We start with great news tonight. Game, set, match. The repulsive, disgusting SCHIFF show circus is almost over. And finally, we see the light at the end of the tunnel. At this hour, very good sources are telling me that the Schumer SCHIFF sham show is circling the drain. Can't come soon enough. Nothing is definite, but it appears Senate Majority Leader McConnell now has the votes to block further witnesses, and this whole pointless charade could be wrapped up hopefully Friday or Saturday of this week. Earlier today, Colorado Senator Cory Gardner announced that he will vote against new witnesses, saying he didn't need to hear from an 18th witness to render a verdict. John Bolton is now officially out of the equation, being needed as a witness. I'll explain in a minute. Now Republicans likely need just one more vote, put an end to the madness once and for all. And to be honest, well, it could come from either side of the aisle. There's now high anxiety inside the Democratic Party tonight. FoxNews.com reporting that any future witness agreement would be subject to a package deal. In other words, Bolton gets hauled in. We'll tell you why that's no longer necessary in a minute. So will two key members of, let's say, the Biden syndicate. Quid pro quo Joe, zero experience Hunter. And as we have documented so many times, at a bare minimum, there's a serious appearance of impropriety. We went through all the laws that, well, seem to fit in this case with the Bidens, all felonies. The president, remember, has a sworn constitutional duty to faithfully execute the laws of this land, and that's why he was rightly concerned not only about Ukrainian election interference, separate and apart from Russian interference, which Devin Nunes warned about, but he's also rightly concerned about quid and pro and quo Joe, and not say, oh, like Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders, who happens to be leading in both Iowa and New Hampshire. Let me sum it up for you one more time. This thing's over. It's finished. Everything else will be a mere formality. Now, we know how this will end. The president will be acquitted. And thankfully, in 279 days, we will have an election in this country. As a matter of fact, we have now actually heard from what the Democrats thought would be their latest star witness. Moments ago, the president tweeted out these words, "Game over." Along with the words, he sent out a video, 2019, John Bolton praising the president's phone call, yes, the one in question, with Ukraine. Let's take a look.
We'll be meeting President Zelensky. He and President Trump have already spoken twice. President called to congratulate President Zelensky on his election and then on his success in the parliamentary election. They were very warm and cordial calls. We're hoping that they'll be able to meet in Warsaw and have a few minutes together because the success of Ukraine, maintaining its freedom, its system of representative government, a free market economy free of corruption, and dealing with the problems of the Donbass and the Crimea are high priorities here, obviously, but high priorities for the United States as well.
Sounds almost verbatim the president's description of the call, what we all read with the transcript. Did you hear any quid or pros or quos like Joe there? Did you hear any dire warnings about misconduct or abuse of power? Did you hear any complaints or consternation at all? The answer is no. Now, that brings me to Mitt Romney tonight. As I said last night, I fought hard, as many of you did. He would have been the better candidate, and I think we were proven right if he won his election in 2012. I defended him against the left smears. I did it because it was the right thing to do. He was the better candidate. They called him a racist. They called him a sexist. They called him a misogynist. They accused him of abusing animals even. Lies, smears, and even cutting some kid's hair. Mitt Romney said earlier in the week that he would likely want to hear from John Bolton. Well, we have now heard everything we need to hear from John Bolton in his own words. And even if the president had privately said that he wanted Ukraine to do A or B or C for the aid, there are 4 facts, Jim Jordan reminds us every time. They'll never change. No linkage between aid and investigations during the phone call. Aid was never mentioned during the phone call But the issue of corruption was brought up. The president was clearly concerned. It was top of mind. We know President Zelensky repeatedly and President Trump have both denied ever any pressure in any way, shape, manner, or form. No one in Ukraine even knew there was a temporary pause on aid at the time of the call or long after the call. And Ukraine, here's the important part. Did they do anything? Did they take any action to get the aid released? None. Zero. Nothing. Did they announce they would do something? Nothing. They announced nothing, never, ever, and they still got the money. So even if the president thought it, even if he said it, maybe thinking about it, doesn't matter. It's what he did. Senator Romney, I say to you tonight, it is time for you to put aside what is clearly a personal disdain, dislike for the president, and you need to do this for the sake of the country and, frankly, for your sworn duty to the Constitution of the United States. Now, forget about your opinions about the president. They're irrelevant. You need that document right there. You need to think about your constitutional role and duty as a senator. Remember, the House and the Constitution has the sole power to impeach a president. They did it. Now they presented their very pathetically weak case. Okay, now you're asking 16 hours worth of questions. Your duty, the sole role of the Senate, is to examine the evidence, render a verdict. Now you just heard from John Bolton. And keep in mind, Senator Romney, I know you represent the great state of Utah. Take a look at this survey put together by, well, he's one of the few people. I've known Matt Towery since the Gingrich polling years. And Matt Towery was one of the few people that said, it's on video, I've got a copy, that Donald Trump was going to win. Not many pollsters were saying this. 68%. He did a poll of Utah last night, of your constituents in Utah. They want President Trump acquitted. 64% oppose additional witnesses. 60% would be less likely to support you if you vote to keep the charade going and call for witnesses. And by the way, think about all those Democrats that are asking you to trust them. Think about who's begging for witnesses. There he is, the compromised in this particular case, corrupt, and we all know congenital liar by the name of Adam Schiff. How can anyone in good conscience ever trust what is really a pretty despicable sociopath? Now, Schiff's pants have been on fire for 3 consecutive years. He's lied about Russia, collusion, FISA. He lied about the FISA application and the Ukraine phone call. He lied about the whistleblower. And he even lied more today. In fact, we just got him red-handed today, lying again about the call transcript between the president, President Trump, and President Zelensky. Take a look.
I want you to do me a favor, though. I want you to do an investigation of Mitt Romney. Do any of us have any question that Barack Obama would be impeached for that kind of misconduct? That's the parallel here.
And he lied in his report to the American people. And now we know, because of the Inspector General report, he lied, and Congressman Devin Nunes told the truth. Bulk of information was the dirty, unverifiable dossier from Russia that Hillary paid for. We also know he's the only American that we know on tape thinking he's talking to a Russian, colluding to get dirt on Donald Trump to use in an election. You know, remember, what do you have? Compromising materials. What? Really? What are they? Pictures of naked Trump. What? Did Vladimir see them? Can we have them? That would be Adam Schiff. Now, the president didn't say, by the way, in the transcript, even though, yeah, Schiff had to make that up too. He didn't say, do me a favor. He said, do us a favor. He said, in relation to the United States. And, of course, we have Politico in a Ukrainian court. Well, they both determined there was election interference by the Ukrainians to help Hillary Clinton. They said it. By the way, interference that we were all worked up about for 3 long years. Foreign interference. Look at Politico. Report's right there. Takes 22 minutes to read it when it says 22 minutes. But naturally, that was only one of many lies today from the congenital liar. Now, this is pretty amazing. And one truly bizarre example from earlier today. Yep, the congenital liar, Schiff, actually doubled down on a lie that has previously earned him 4 Pinocchios from the liberal Washington Post. For a Democrat, that's hard to get. Despite the mountain of evidence that Schiff's staff communicated with the fake whistleblower from the get-go, well, the congenital liar still claiming he had no idea who the person is. Do you believe him? Because he's contradicted himself back and forth and back again. Take a look.
First of all, I don't know who the whistleblower is. I haven't met them or communicated with them in any way. The conspiracy theory, which I think was outlined earlier, that the whistleblower colluded with the Intel Committee staff to hatch an impeachment inquiry is a complete and total fiction.
He first said that, then he said, oh, I should have been more clear. Yeah, there was contact with my office and the whistleblower. Now he's saying it didn't happen. A complete, total fiction, when even the liberal Washington Post will give a Democrat 4 Pinocchios because he's lying. Now, if the congenital liar has nothing to hide, then why did he refuse to call the hearsay whistleblower, non-whistleblower in for testimony, which he originally promised to do? Why did he admit there was contact with his staff with the whistleblower? Now, this was a witch hunt that has been led totally, completely by him, a deranged liar, and all his fellow Democrats that hate Trump every second, every minute, every hour of every day. Now, there's nothing legitimate about this charade. There never has been. The Senate ought never lend any legitimacy to this corrupt process. You got Schiff, his top investigation, witness audition. That was a farce. Zero due process. The accusations are untrue. They have been untrue. The articles are ridiculous and unconstitutional. And today, the president's legal team beat the living hell out of the Democrats, and they made a compelling case for what should now happen in short order. That would be acquittal. Let's take a look.
Manager Schiff's words, he talked about it would be wrong if the FBI or the Department of Justice was starting a political investigation of someone's political opponent. And I'm thinking to myself, but isn't that exactly what happened?
Multiple witnesses who were called in the House by the House Democrats testified that the United States policy towards Ukraine got stronger under the Trump administration, in part largely because of that lethal aid.
The issue is not whether a crime is required. The issue is whether abuse of power is a permissible constitutional criteria, and the answer from the history is clearly, unequivocally no.
By the way, the question and answer period, we're continuing to monitor. We'll put it up on the side of your screen. You can take a look. And if anything compelling comes up, we'll bring it to you live. While the president's team puts forward a serious case, top Democrats continue to play their political games. And by the way, this is all they've done for 3 years. They've done not a single thing for we the people. They're supposed to be public servants. Earlier today, Pelosi's, friend in the Senate, Chucky Schumer, he actually invited the guy that is now indicted by the Southern District of New York for taking, of all things, $1 million from Russia and trying to hide it. And other campaign finance violations. He actually invited Lev Parnas as his special guest, and Lev briefly became a far-left hero because of his wild allegations against Trump. But unfortunately for Schumer, well, he is out on bail for the violations of campaign finance and trying to hide the $1 million payment from, of all countries, Russia. And he couldn't get into the Senate gallery because he's wearing an electronic ankle bracelet. This is their star witness. This is who Adam Schiff said, believe him. But Joe and Hunter did nothing. You can't make this up. But it's so sad because it's our country. And they are hurting the country. And they have been for 3 years. Take a look.
His lawyer called us up and asked for tickets, like many New York constituents, and we said, you can get tickets. We give them out to the New Yorkers who've asked. I'm not sure Parnas would be allowed in because of the electronics around his ankle.
Yeah, many, indicted New Yorkers with ankle bracelets, they're all asking to go. They all want to go. You know, the Democrats and their BFFs and the mob and the media, they love playing these cheap political games, just like Kavanaugh. It's Kavanaugh 2.0. And I guess they think we, the American people, are stupid. They clearly don't like the way we vote. They seem to hate our way of life. They seem to hate our values. They seem to hate our choice for president. And they, remember, we've been called irredeemable deplorables, smelly Walmart, Trump-supporting shoppers. I like Walmart. And by the way, they think that it's a bad thing, I guess, that we're angry and that we're bitter and we cling to God. Okay, I'm guilty. I want to cling to God, our Constitution, our Bibles, and I believe in my faith. I do. I'm guilty. I believe in God. Yep. Okay, guilty. Perfect encapsulation. This is a tale now of two Americas. On the one side, you have nothing but 24/7 hate, accomplishing nothing, never-ending conspiracy theories, hoaxes, lies, witch hunts. On the other side, you got a president keeping every promise he's made. a successful agenda, unprecedented success economically and foreign policy, real tangible results. We even put together a video that perfectly exemplifies this critical moment in time. Two Americas. This will be up for grabs in 279 days. You will be the ultimate jury, and you get to shock the world again. Take a look.
We have created 7 million new jobs. The average unemployment rate under my administration is lower than any previous administration, listen to this one, in United States history.
Donald Trump's a smart one, and y'all elitists are dumb.
You elitists with your geography and your maps.
We will replace the NAFTA nightmare, one of the worst trade deals ever in history.
If you vote for Trump, you're the bad guy.
We also signed a fantastic new trade agreement with China.
They'll follow him to hell or wherever he's going. They don't care about the facts. They don't know about the facts.
We have fully rebuilt the United States military.
You could put half of Trump supporters into what I call the basket of deplorables.
America is winning again, and America is thriving again like never before.
Let's see. You can add the end of the ISIS caliphate in Syria, Baghdadi and associates dead. Let's see. Oh, we can add to that. Yep, the #1 state sponsor of terror, their leader Soleimani, dead. Record low unemployment since 1969. African Americans, Asian Americans, Hispanic Americans, women in the workplace, youth unemployment, African American youth unemployment. Wow, we're at a critical point. 279 days. You have an opportunity to shock the establishment world again. Make no mistake, a lot on the line.